This virtual festival has been organized by Youth Celebrate Diversity, and the festival is proudly sponsored by Boeing.
This is the next segment of the amazing YCD Virtual Festival, a very exciting segment where some panelists will discuss classism and economic injustices, specifically during the COVID-19 pandemic. And here with me on screen are three amazing people who will be talking throughout this discussion, as well as our amazing ASL interpreter. So thank you. So first up, we have Lameese McCowie, and she is a student activist and outspoken member of her community as a junior at Oberlin High School. We also have Anna Cornelius, who is a core member of Denver Homeless Out Loud, which is an outstanding organization working with and for people experiencing homelessness to advocate for their rights, choices, and dignity. And last but certainly not least, we have Representative Leslie Herrod, who, among many other accomplishments, is the chair of the House Finance Committee, vice chair of the House Judiciary Committee, and chair of the Committee on Legal Services here in Colorado. And I am Reem Saeed. I am a sophomore at Oberlin High School, and I will be leading this discussion today. So we have 4 questions prepared for the speakers to answer within our time right now. So I'll go ahead and start with the first question. So first, what were some personal experiences you have had or witnessed that made you realize that economic injustices is a big issue, especially during the pandemic? And anyone can start.
Hi, everyone. I'm State Representative Leslie Herrod. I represent House District 8, which is in Central and Northeast Denver. Thank you so much for having me. I love seeing youth who are fighting for change. I am the first African-American LGBTQ person to hold elected office in Colorado, and I started as a youth activist, so keep fighting. I also, as you said, chair the Finance Committee, and I got to tell you, COVID has not created economic inequality, but it exacerbated what already exists. And I know that firsthand because, one, I've seen it happen as a legislature, but also, my own family. We don't come from wealth. And quite frankly, with so many people who are struggling to figure out paycheck to paycheck, how they're going to pay for their rent and their mortgages and things like that, COVID came as a gut punch that, quite frankly, some folks were not able to survive. And other folks are thriving. There are some folks who are making money during this time period where other folks are not. And so the economic injustices are real, and they are being exacerbated by COVID. And I can't tell you how important it is for people to activate around this issue, because right now we are having conversations at the Capitol and throughout the country about what recovery looks like. And if recovery continues on with a system that leaves people like me and you behind, it's not true recovery. We have an obligation to use this opportunity in this time period to make sure that everyone has the same opportunities to thrive as their neighbors. And that's something that we need to put in place. That means helping small businesses. That means ensuring that all kids, go to school and have access to internet. That means that there are jobs for all of us. Those are things that we need to work on. And yes, we also need a robust recovery package that includes cash payments for those who need it.
Thank you. That was amazing.
With Denver Homeless Out Loud. I'm also really grateful to be here. I was a child activist. I've been an activist pretty much my entire life. So I commend you for putting this together and for having the courage to be the moderator. I personally had a huge loss of income, and without the stimulus payment, I would not have been able to make my rent and my bills. And then another thing that was really present in our community is just the amount of people camping within Denver. So even though we could see it before, now you literally cannot turn down a street in Denver without seeing a tent or seeing someone who is unhoused, potentially, wrapped in a blanket. And then we have the challenge of also having an urban camping ban, which prohibits survival within our city. And that this pandemic has exacerbated that. We know that our point in time numbers, which were taken in January, have risen by about 80% since the pandemic hit our city.
Hi, I'm Lameese. I was, like you said, a junior at Oakland High School. And, you know, I have always, in my own way, kind of been like an activist and a student activist. And my parents taught me at a young age to always, you know, fight for the underdog, you know. And I think COVID has I've definitely seen COVID impact many students and many lower income students and people like myself who don't come from wealth. My parents, they didn't just get to stop work, or they don't, you know, work jobs that you can just, you know, do from home or work from home. I've seen so many people who I know who are a little, you know, higher income, and a lot of their parents were able to kind of sit at a computer and get their job done. But my parents, and my mom specifically, who worked in childcare, had to physically go to her job every day, constantly risking her life and those around her. And it definitely scared me because I wasn't sure if she was going to contract COVID, if she was going to, you know, it was definitely risk. And for those of us who don't have something to like fall back on just in case things get rough, it's definitely a fear and something that I have seen very prevalent in my community as well. And, you know, I understand the economy is at its worst than it's ever been, and I understand that you can't just stop jobs, but it is definitely scary to have to see people who work those low-income jobs and those low-wage jobs to have to risk their lives out every day on the front lines, just trying to get by, honestly, and to trying to provide and serve for those who, you know, need it. And so I definitely think it's something we need to take into consideration and remember that not everybody has the privilege of being able to either work from home or even stop work and take a break during the pandemic. And yeah.
Thank you all so much. You guys answered that question perfectly. The second question we have is, as the economy has fallen into a recession, do you guys think that politicians and people who have the economy practically in their hands have handled the issue with low-income Americans in mind? And how do you think they could do better if not?
So this is what I'm going to listen to and then happy to respond afterwards. But tell me like it is.
Well, I can start. I know that here in Denver, that is part of our struggle in that we are not aligned with our city government. Our city government criminalizes survival. And in these times, it's very difficult for people to find anywhere to exist. We have seen, initially we saw a temporary moratorium on sweeps, but now that has increased exponentially. So where we were seeing one sweep a week in 2019, we're now up to 3 sweeps a week in the current time. And we're seeing people that are moved, you know, we have some folks that are moved every single day from the spot that they're in, and then the city is not only destroying their belongings, but then they're putting area restrictions, fencing, jagged rocks, and other items that prevent people from being able to lay down and rest. So this is part of our struggle. This is part of what Denver Homeless Out Loud takes on, is really like a legal battle and a legislative battle. And we really work diligently to empower those who are houseless to advocate for their rights with our support.
I think from a student's perspective, it's personally, you know, I do think like things like school should be shut down, honestly. But I also understand it's not, you know, possible. Like you said, the economy is kind of in one of the worst places it's ever been, and I understand jobs are on the line. But let's, for example, even talk about our own president. He didn't take COVID seriously for the longest time and would constantly try to downplay it and put people's lives at risk, and not even thinking about low income people who are going to have the luxury. He, first of all, when he got COVID, got access to amazing care, as well as has something to fall back on in case he gets it. Some of us are parents. If they get it and they can't work, what are we going to do? You know what I mean? Like, we don't have these things to fall back on. We don't have access to amazing health care, not to mention how much it would cost. And I just feel like, I don't really feel like it's been taken seriously. I understand we have, you know, the Colorado mandate of like, you have to wear a mask, but I think more should be done. And I think more services should be provided. It shouldn't just be as if every man for himself, because this is simply not one of those kind of cases where everybody can just provide for themselves. And so I definitely think it should be taken more seriously, because right now I don't feel as supported, and I don't feel safe, and I don't feel like everything will be okay, because quite frankly, it's pretty terrifying. My bad. It's pretty terrifying. So yeah, I definitely think the government officials and a lot of the things you see, even just like I said, from a student's perspective, it's nothing's really reassured, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I think it should be taken more seriously, and there should be more, more mandates, more rules, more restrictions being put in place to make sure everybody is safe and everybody has a chance to make sure they're healthy.
Amen. I mean, I agree with what's been said. Let me just say how I feel about things too. So I'm just one state elected official. I need the support of my colleagues to get anything done. And we had a very short session once COVID hit, 3 weeks afterwards to do things. And I focus a lot of my time on passing police reform, as some of you all know. We didn't even know where we were going to be with COVID, right? We all thinking it's much shorter. But in this time period, we have allowed the homelessness crisis to grow in Denver exponentially before COVID hit. So again, once COVID hit, our interventions were not nearly enough to address the need. You know, I love the city. I love Denver. I come into town, I'm always like, come to Denver because this is where it's at. I'm not going to California or New Jersey or where. You come to me. They come. And then the conversation started to change, like, why aren't you doing more to address homelessness? I'm staying at this hotel and there's homeless folks outside and we're progressives. Why can't we do more to take care of this? We should. We haven't been. And so I believe that there's been a lack of leadership on this issue that has led us to this point today, which means now we need leadership to step up, and maybe that's more citizen-led, to step up and make the changes that we need. So at the federal government, F. I think they're an F. I think the state with Polis, I think he's doing a good job. I think he stepped in and said, we have mask mandates. We are watching the data. We are watching the numbers to see when we can open schools, open bars, shut them down, whatever. But as a state government around homelessness issues and a legislature, so including myself around issues, we've not done near enough. We got to step up our game. And when we go back into session, we need to do more to bring down the income inequality that's going on right now. That's our jobs, and we better do it. And I think people's lives are at stake, quite frankly. And then at the city level, I told you how I feel about what we're doing and what we're not doing. We need to focus on this issue. It needs to be just as important as building a new building. We need to make sure that we're building for the city and ensuring that people who already live here get benefit from the growth. And we are still growing as Denver. Median housing cost is $600,000. That is insane. Meanwhile, we have people who are sleeping in tents, right? Who are camping in the city, who have to be swept away just to move to another neighborhood. Why don't we provide supportive, sustainable housing? You know, why don't we support people and make sure that there is an economic safety net in case someone does get sick? These are things that we can do. Some of them are on the ballot this year that we can actually vote on in November. But other things we need you all as young people to push us to do. And you can reach out to me. I know I'm gonna have to get off, unfortunately, the Zoom soon. But I want you to know that you can reach out to me on social media at Leslie Herrod on Instagram and Twitter, and Leslie for Colorado at Facebook. I will be your voice. But not only that, I would want you to come to my committee and be your voice and advocate for what you believe in and what you think needs to change, and then hold us accountable to that change. So I got to go on this question. I think it's important, though. I don't think that I have I've done enough, but I'm only one person. I need your help to do more. So join me in this fight to make sure that we actually have a Denver and a Colorado where everyone is thriving and that we can all believe in and we can move forward together. So thank you all so much for your advocacy. Thanks for all that you're doing. I look forward to checking y'all out on Instagram and seeing the other great conversations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so if everyone's ready to move on to the next question, then we will begin with, how do you think being a low-income American differs during the pandemic than being a non-low-income American?
In my opinion and my perspective, I think there's a huge disparity between low income and high income Americans. One being, like I said before multiple times, the fact that one is able to possibly take a break from work or work from home, and the other can't possibly do that. For a lot of low income and low wage, like service jobs that people work, they're constantly risking their lives every single day to provide a service for people, an important one. Let's think about even the postal service. We're trying to even figure out if we could even save the postal service, and people who go out and help people, like physically, like not just I've seen so many jobs where they have to constantly be in close contact with people, and I just think one thing as well, like I said, is the fact that one has something to fall back on, that being those being the high income Americans, and then the others don't, is honestly such a disservice to me. Like, it's as if one group gets to feel comfort, feel reassurance, like I said before, about how they are gonna be okay. Worst comes to worst, when the caretaker of the home gets COVID, they can either be in great care, or they have money, they have something to fall back on, they have the ability to provide for those they need to take care of. Then the others, they don't have that. They either don't get access to good healthcare, they don't have enough to afford good healthcare, or they are just they might be living paycheck to paycheck, barely getting by. Like some people have said, they like even I've heard with a lot of people in my own community, if they miss their next paycheck, they might not be able to make their rent or their bills. And it's a terrifying thing to think about. And so I just think in general, we have to remember that even though it says, even though the president has been downplaying what COVID is, and a lot of other officials have been downplaying it, it is something serious that we all need to take seriously. And it's not this make-believe thing. We've already seen so many deaths rise in the past few months. But yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
Well, as far as our unhoused community members, there's a couple of things going on. So we know that our unhoused community members, a large number of them have pre-existing conditions, disabilities, mental health issues, and substance abuse issues. So all of those complicate this whole COVID pandemic. The other thing we know is that Black and Brown Indigenous people are overrepresented within the unhoused community. That being said, our city wanted to put folks in a congregate shelter, which did not meet CDC guidelines. And so it's illegal to camp outside, but they wanted folks to go to this congregate shelter. So when we tested both, so we tested folks at a campsite, one of the larger campsites that we had in Denver, we found 0 positive cases of COVID. These folks they had their tents 6 feet apart, they were quarantining in their tents, they were getting fresh air, and they were getting sunlight. All things that are recommended for maintaining good health during this pandemic. What we saw in the congregate sheltering is that those guidelines were not being met, and they had 200 cases of COVID and 8 staff members that also contracted COVID. So on the one hand, they're saying it's illegal to camp out, please go to this shelter, but actually going to the shelter could potentially be life-threatening. Which makes it really complicated. Also, I go back to these point-in-time numbers because those are actual data that we have from the city. We know those numbers are not an accurate representation, but in January we had 4,171 people that were counted in the point-in-time count. If we look at all of our shelter beds and all of our motel vouchers, they equal to 1,600, which leaves well over 2,000, about 2,500 people that are without shelter on any given night on the streets of Denver with no legal ability to survive. So it is actually safer for folks to be camping and following CDC guidelines. And one of the ways in which Denver Homeless Out Loud has supported that, we have worked together in collaboration with Mutual Aid Denver, and we have been able to supply 5 porta potties, hand washing stations to the larger camps because our city refuses to provide those services.
Thank you guys so much. There's definitely large disparities that haven't been addressed that you guys explained wonderfully. So for our final question, we have, what nuances have you seen that low-income Americans have had to struggle with during the pandemic that you had not seen before or had not been discussed before?
I think one thing that was brought up earlier as well, and something that I've seen online and just, learned about, was the, like I said, huge disparity as well. Like minorities are being being hit hard with this pandemic. They don't have access, like I said, to good health care. They don't have enough money to fall back on, so they're constantly risking their lives every day. They also don't see enough I've seen many how do I explain it? There have been so many people who are so terrified that they might have COVID without even actually having the symptoms, that get tested over so much that they're actually the people who actually need to be getting tested, who have symptoms, who are in danger of actually having COVID, now don't even have the resources to get tested and know if they even have it. That's one thing I've seen. Another thing is the fact that people who live in this privilege of having enough money and, who are high income, they also not only live in that privilege of having the money, but the privilege of being able to ignore this pandemic as if it's nothing and downplay it. The rest, the low income people have, and citizens, not only, have to take this seriously, but there's this constant anxiety, this fear that just like that, their whole life could be gone, whether that's their house, their job, but also their health, maybe their family members. And so I just think, some big conversations that need to be had are the fact that some people are getting hit harder than this. I know a lot of the things, a lot of slogans, a lot of conversations people like to say, or things that people like to say in phrases, are like, oh, we're all going through this together. And that's correct. We all are going through this together, but don't act as if we're all being hit the same way, because some of us really aren't. And it's important to highlight that so that we know how to get care to those who really need it.
I think what I have seen is a real uptick in desperation at the building where Denver Homeless Out Loud is located. Is typically open during the day for folks to stop by. They can use our restroom, they can get some snacks, they can use it as a place to just exist and not be bothered and not be persecuted. And we have seen theft, which has not happened in the past. Where people, I was there, and this girl was asking me for a tent, and I was actually holding a tent for someone who had their things stolen, and someone had bought her a tent and brought it to us. And I was holding it for her, and I had to tell her, I'm sorry, we don't have tents right now, but we're working on a drive, and we will have them in the next week or so. And she said, I see that tent right there. And I said, that's for someone. And then when I had my back turned, she actually ran in, grabbed it, and took off. And that's not something that we have seen in the past. And then there's also the fact that for, I think for people who are housed and who have a high enough income that they can like work from home and get good medical care, this has been kind of like a break. And for folks that are unhoused, there's been an uptick in sweeps, property is being stolen, and if you get sick, there's really no one to call. There's no one that's going to come. You're going to try to survive this in your tent in the midst of being swept away with all of your belongings. And so this is for us, what we see is that this is about survival. For many of our folks, this is just bare bones survival.
Thank you guys so much. All of your words today have been absolutely amazing. It's given me, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers at home, a lot new perspective on an issue that seems to be affecting so many people, but has clearly affected many groups of people in various ways. So if any of you guys have any final thoughts, you can share those.
I just really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to get this information out. I am really inspired by our youth of today, that they care and they're engaged and they have skills that allow them to excel and bring a lot of these issues forward. And I'm really grateful to your generation.
Thank you. Lameese, if you have any final thoughts.
Just to mimic what she said, thank you so much for having me on here. I'm really grateful to even be able to, share my voice on a platform like this. I also, do some work with Youth Celebrate Diversity, and I just love the work they do. So this is just another kind of, I guess, opportunity for me to just learn more. And I was glad I got to take away so much, not only from this festival, but as well from my fellow panelists. So thank you so much for providing your insight and allowing us to learn from you. And I definitely have some more research to do, hearing all these new perspectives. So I just am just proud to be part of my generation and happy to keep things going forward.
And with that, that is all the time we have for today. So thank you to Anna Cornelius of Denver Homeless Out Loud. Thank you to Lameese McCowie from Aurora, Colorado. And although she left, thank you to Leslie Herrod for joining the stream on such an important topic. So thank you guys.